So, how's champagne made? As we discussed, champagne undergoes two fermentations. One is obviously the primary fermentation, and the other one is called the secondary fermentation. You pick up your grapes. Now I'm gonna use my fancy pen again. Uh, there you go. That's your grapes. You use your grapes. You destem your grapes. You undergo the fermentation. Fermentation where sugar is eaten up by the yeast. CO2 is produced, energy is produced, which is in the form of heat. And this is what we need, ethanol. Ethanol is produced, that is alcohol. And you get a wine. Now this wine, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a still wine. A still wine. We are um, going to make this wine undergo a secondary fermentation wherein the bubbles would be produced, but that we'll talk about later. So our first aim is to collect the grapes, destem the grapes, get the grapes to undergo fermentation, which is sugar plus yeast is equal to ethanol, and then making a still wine from it. And this is going to be a white wine wherein um, we do not need the skins. So the skins would be taken off. Okay. So post our first fermentation or primary fermentation, the bottles are sealed. Before sealing the bottles, there's something called lekha de tirage that is put in the bottles, which is a combination of unfermented grape juice and some yeast. And then these bottles are taken to underground cellars and then they're kept there. So what happens, since now this bottle has some unfermented grape juice and yeast, you will have a scenario wherein the secondary fermentation starts again, wherein you will have a slight increase in alcohol content, maybe 0.5% or maybe 1%. But more importantly, you will have a case wherein you will have the production of CO2, the bubbles that we want. Um, and as this bubbles, as the fermentation gets produced, more of this CO2 is produced and more of the bubbles get produced inside the bottle. These bubbles incorporate in the wine, get dissolved in the wine, and stay like this for about 15 months. That's the minimum aging for champagne, 15 months. And out of those 15 months, 12 months would be on something called lees, Lees, lees. So lees is basically, remember that yeast that we had put in liquor de tirage, which broke down the sugar and got us a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of CO2. That yeast obviously now is dead. So where is that yeast going to go? That yeast would stay in the bottle but sort of settles down in the bottle. Um, and this lees is what gives the characteristic flavor to the champagne, that biscuity, brioche, toasty flavor profile that champagne is most famous for. The minimum spending time is 15 months, as I said, and 12 months would be on lease, but generally most producers extend that to maybe even sometimes double or thrice the minimum requirements. Once they've achieved that in the underground cellars, there's something called riddling that that the bottles need to undergo, because now since you've got that yeast in the bottle, the yeast has imparted the flavor. We do not need the yeast anymore, but we still need to get rid of the yeast. So riddling is something, if you see this gentleman right here, there you go, my pen again. This gentleman right here uh, is moving the bottles, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. So this is a way where they move the bottles from an angle of where the bottles are horizontal, and then to 15 degrees, and then to 30 degrees, and then to 60 degrees, and then you have a case where these bottles are upside down with the neck vertical towards the floor. So slowly and steadily this yeast assembles to the neck, and then there's a process which is called disgorgement, wherein this neck is immersed into chilled substance, wherein this neck gets frozen. So does the yeast inside this neck, and then with a pressure, when you open this, the pressure inside the bottle is so much that it just pushes out that frozen yeast, or lees you would say, and that process is called disgorgement. Now this frozen yeast is like a capsule of white substance, which we need to get rid of, because otherwise it will it will sort of it won't damage the wine, but there'll be bits and pieces in your champagne, and you wouldn't really like that when you paid so much for a bottle of champagne. So that's the process of disgorgement. After disgorgement, dosage, which is called liquor d'expédition, wherein they, whatever little champagne that they've lost in the disgorgement process to get rid of champagne, to get rid of the yeast, they refill it, and that refilling is called dosage. Then they bottle it, and off it goes. So that's a process of champagne, right from the primary fermentation to liquor de tirage. Secondary fermentation, CO2 is produced, yeast dies off, the bottle stays in contact with the lees for 12 months on lees and 15 months total. Riddling, then disgorgement, where the yeast gets removed, dosage, and off it goes. Okay, so I sort of compiled these picks because I always like to talk about, I don't generally like to take pics off Google. More importantly, I think it's better if I share my experiences of this, of whatever product that I'm talking about. So these are the pics that were taken by me, and this is the underground cellars of Champagne. This is in Mums in Reims. So you can see these. So most of Champagne is full of these caves or caves, as they say in French. These are Champagne. These tunneled under the city of Reims. These tunnels wherein these were actually dug earlier in Roman times, when Romans found out that there's a lot of chalk under the soil of Champagne, and that's the soil that we still have in Champagne, really. So they dug out. All these mining used to happen, and a lot of these caves you'll see are quite very, very old. This is yours truly here. That's me. Oh, and over here you've got a case of bottles which are sitting and being riddled. So the lees is being pushed towards the neck of the bottle, and slowly and steadily these are on an angle right now, but these would be vertical, upside down very soon, to make sure all that lees comes to the neck of the bottle, and then disgorgement can happen. So that's your that's a little bit of real-time pics for you. Okay, another same concept of riddling. I mean, you can see this wonderful lady here holding the bottle of champagne. You can see it starts off about 15 degrees here. That's about 15 degrees. Then it's moved after a while to 30, and then after a while to 45, and then after a while to 60, and then it's vertical, upside down. So all this lees that we want is in the neck. And you can see I've got this pic, and if you see, you can see a whitish substance here. That is what lees is, and it's sort of starting to accumulate in the neck. And when you open this with the force, when you freeze this neck of this bottle, the yeast freezes as well. And as soon as you open this cap, the yeast is pushed out with the pressure of the bottle. So that's what disgorgement is. So just thought would share this with you because it's quite important in the champagne making process. And you can imagine, you can these are the kind of things that takes up a lot of time and take up a lot of effort, labor intensive, and that's why champagne is expensive. It's not easy to make champagne. Okay, last but not the least, we'll talk about a little bit about certain terminologies associated with champagne. First of all, most of the champagnes that you will find would be non-vintage champagnes, which means that the grapes that go into making a bottle of champagne would come from multiple vintages, not from one particular year. Every champagne house has their blend, and they sort of use different QAs from different years to blend and make their house blend or house brand, as they say. So you can say that most champagnes are non-vintage or maybe multi-vintage, you can say, if that's a term. The second term would be blanc de blanc. Blanc obviously in French means white. So we're saying white of white, which means the champagne is made only from white grapes, 100% white grapes. And in majority of the cases, you would see that would be Chardonnay. Blanc de noir. Blanc de noir means, noir in French means black. So that would be white of black, which means a champagne made from black grapes only. That would be either Pinot Noir or Meunier. So that's Blanc de Noir. And then last but not the least is the vintage champagne. Vintage champagne is made from grapes of single vintage, one particular year, and obviously that really depends on what kind of vintage it has been. It depends from year to year. If it's been a good year, then obviously you will have a vintage champagne. Depends on the champagne house as well. But obviously these are more, they've got more depth of flavor. They are more age worthy. They can age for a longer time. Obviously a lot more effort, and the minimum aging is 36 months. So that's also something that we need to keep in mind. And of course, the prices are pretty high for the vintage champagnes. So you're looking at the best of champagnes on this particular level. Right, so that's pretty much it from me today. So this was the introductory champagne experience, you can say. I would be sharing more French regions on this Journey to France series that I've been working on. So my next one would be the Rhone Valley, and subsequently maybe Chablis after that. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you liked it. Have any questions? Do let me know. Cheerio. Bye-bye.